this Wisconsin Hemp by Hand project, and this is the kickoff event for that project. So I'll just talk a little bit about that project and our goals, and then we'll get into our panel discussion. That is the purpose or the reason why you're all here today, followed by a Q&A session, and then discuss some of the upcoming workshops and webinars that we have prepared for you all. So let's see here, make sure. There we go. So just a very brief overview of the project. So as I mentioned, we start with hemp. We're starting to grow hemp around the state of Wisconsin, around the country. We're learning how to do this again, getting a better handle on the agronomic practices and what cultivars we should be using in different regions. What are the traits we should be selecting for? And there are hemp products. That's one of the things, that's the big claim, is that hemp can be processed into many, many different products. And indeed, there are these existing products, but there still is this disconnect, especially in newer regions where we haven't been growing hemp that long, from how you get it from that product or that raw hemp from the field into producing these products. So we wanted to focus on a couple of key areas: paper production, textile production, and building materials were the focus of the grant. And so what we decided to do was, for the first part of the seed project, was to have a panel discussion with industry partners that have expertise in these different areas. And what expertise quantifies as, or is characterized as they have made products before out of hemp. That is what makes a hemp expert right now in a specific area. So having this panel discussion, and really just to kind of pick the brains of people who have done this before, figure out what some of the limitations are, start a conversation about how to improve the efficiencies and the infrastructure that's needed to go from these grow from raw hemp into these products. And then the second part of the project is to have these paired webinars and workshops. So we're emerging from COVID here. We can start to get together in person. So we focus on each of these product areas: paper, textile production, and specifically hempcrete for hemp building. And we're going to have a webinar talking about how that product is made, and then a workshop where people can actually come and make that raw product. So that's the project overview. So today, as I mentioned, we have a very nice panel prepared for you. So we have 5 panelists, and one of them has just, I believe, joined the discussion, so that's great. So each of these panelists have prepared a couple of answers to some questions that I've asked them. So they're going to introduce themselves, where they're located, and kind of tell us their journey of how long they've been working in hemp, what they see as some of the challenges that they've had to overcome in their different areas of expertise, and what they're most excited about moving forward in the hemp sphere. And then after the 5 different panelists have discussed those different or have told us their answers to those questions, then we're going to just have a Q&A with them. We can ask whatever they're willing to answer. Otherwise, there'll be a no comment. So with that, I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen and focus on all of your faces here. So first, why don't we have Steve Kostell? Do you want to be the first person to discuss your area of expertise?
Sure, absolutely. Good evening, everybody. I'm talking to you from Vermont, so a little ways away from Wisconsin, but just about as far north, I think. So I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Community Development and Applied Economics at the University of Vermont, and housed in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. But my background would be in design and studio art, and my segue into hemp was through a project actually that was started at the University of Illinois with my colleague Eric, who's going to introduce himself later. We started a project called Fresh Press, and we were looking at agricultural fibers as a regional or localized fiber shed, and particularly looking at some of the byproduct from research projects that were being done on campus. So I think that project's been going for about 10 years now. About 8 years ago, I left Illinois and came to the University of Vermont, which started my uphill climb to start a paper studio again. Landing first in the art department, and everyone could probably understand that art departments are severely underfunded in academic institutions historically. So if there aren't those types of facilities, then they're really difficult to get. And I was kind of lucky and had an opportunity to start a design program in my current department. And with that came some funding to support research. And so I was able to set up a paper studio very similar to what we had set up at the University of Illinois. And I also became friends with one of our extension faculty, Heather Darby, who's been growing industrial hemp for some years now. Anyway, I don't know exactly how long, but I know before it was able to be done without permitting. So she's been really active and had been doing field trials with different types of cultivars. And so I was able to coerce her in the meeting, and I took her a packet of papers that were samples of papers that we made at Fresh Press and shared them with her. And it was really easy to win her over as a collaborator. And it started a great conversation around developing the regional fiber shed and the way that hemp can really afford that opportunity, especially in a rural state like Vermont. And through that partnership, we actually successfully were funded through the USDA, a REEU project, which is one of the research and extension experiential undergraduate learning fellowship programs. So $340,000 over 4 years to bring in 3 cohorts of undergraduates from around the US to really look at the agricultural transition around industrial hemp. And so with that, there's 4 investigators. So we have a plant scientist, we have a geneticist, we have an agronomist. The plant scientist, geneticist is the same person. And then we have an agricultural economist, and then myself as a designer and looking at materials and prototyping materials from hemp. And with that, Heather also has a young research assistant who's looking at hand processing for textiles. So we're really looking at different cultivars, fiber grain varieties, and looking at fiber yields as well as then some of the characteristics. So some of the research that we've been doing through my lab, the Biofiber Lab at UVM, would be looking at different fiber characteristics. So partnering with faculty in engineering and working with honors students to do fiber characteristics of the different cultivars for both bast and hurd fibers, looking at those fibers raw, looking at them pulped, looking at them as sheets, and then also looking at some of the structural integrity of those sheets. And some fascinating realizations through the hand papermaking tradition. So again, really looking at reconnecting this agrarian practice of the crafts, right? And bringing the roots of making back to the landscape and activating the local fiber shed. And so the particular interest with hemp, obviously a really strong fiber, but when it's processed through the traditional Western style of hand papermaking, it retains a lot of starches yet that bridge the cellulose and adds to its hydrophobic qualities, which is actually pretty interesting and has garnered some interest from my material science friends. So yeah, I guess the biggest challenge with hemp, it would definitely be the processing being the missing link, right? Being able to really at scale convert those fiber streams and then opening up those opportunities for refining, for finding its way into various consumables. I guess what excites me most moving forward would be the opportunities for rural micro manufacturing, really embracing the third wave craft movement, the makers movement, and really looking at rural autonomy with economic opportunities. So I'll drop it there.
Great, thanks very much, Steve. One thing I forgot to mention is as you have questions, feel free to either hold them, jot them down to yourself and we can ask them out loud later, or you can start to write them in the chat. So if you're unfamiliar with Zoom, somewhere in your Zoom window, there is a little chat bubble that if you click on, you can write your question directly in there. So we'll hold questions until everyone has introduced themselves. Thank you. All right, moving on to Ali or Alexandra. Can pin you.
Oh, great. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I am calling in from Ventura, California, so it is mid-afternoon here. I'm glad to be joining everyone. I know we have people all around the country, so thanks for joining us. I go by Ali. So Ali Lapierre. I am a material development engineer at Patagonia. I currently head up our natural wovens kind of branch of the company, and also am the material development engineer for our workwear category as well as our socks. I have been a part of the hemp industry, I guess, for the past 6 years. And I arrived here when I joined Patagonia. We were kind of doing an overall landscape of what it looks like to have domestic hemp processing, where hemp is, why it's an important fiber, and why it's worth having in our product. So for the past 6 years, I've worked with some of the lovely people on this call and also manufacturers and farmers and processors all across the US and across the globe to network and learn and understand about hemp as a fiber and what it can do for the planet. So one of the really interesting things about hemp fiber that Patagonia is interested in is the phytoremediation properties for soil, the carbon collection aspect, and kind of how we can use hemp in different ways like crop rotation and things like that to kind of remediate soil and have sustainable agriculture practices. And I guess for me and for the textile industry as a whole, I would say one of the biggest challenges, kind of like what Stephen said, is processing. Having sustainable processing for us is a big deal, as we talked about. There's the lignin that builds up in the fiber. When we look at textiles, you need to separate the individual fibers in the stalk of the plant to get them into a place where they can be used for really fine textiles down the line. So removing those lignins is super important, but the unfortunate side effect of that is using a lot of water and energy along the way. So finding sustainable processing has been kind of a big focus for us. And then there's, some other challenges, just honestly marketing for hemp. Coming at this project pre-2018, pre-Farm Bill, there were a lot of misconceptions about hemp 6 years ago. And there also, there's, been a fundamental, I think, lack of, resources available to farmers and people interested in growing. So I think having places to share information, having a cohesive way to grade hemp and to cost hemp for farmers so that they're getting paid what they deserve to be paid for the crop they're growing, and then also the processing piece to get our spinners consistent hemp to go into end textiles has pretty much been the big challenges along the way. Moving forward, I guess I'm really excited to see more people across the industry working together. Textiles is just a tiny branch of what hemp can do, and I think it's really interesting to start to see more people on the paper and pulping side and on the construction and building materials side sort of start to come together and understand how we can all support each other as we look at domestic hemp moving forward. So excited to see collaboration starting to happen.
Great. Thanks very much. And I'm glad that you have a little visitor that is our sixth panelist.
She joins every meeting. I don't have a choice.
Very good. All right, moving on to Eric.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm Eric Benson. I am living in Champaign, Illinois, so I'm in the middle of farm country. I'm in the thick of things here for agriculture. I'm about 2 hours south of Chicago, if you don't know where Champaign is, and south of Wisconsin. I am an associate professor of graphic design at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, and as my 15th year teaching here, which is kind of crazy if I think about it. It's the longest job that I've held. Let's see, looking at the questions here. Steve did a great job of introducing Fresh Press for me, so I don't think I have to talk too much more about that. Steve and I started Fresh Press exactly 10 years ago. Our mission has been the same, of changing the paper supply chain from forest to farm. And we've been interested here in paper, but also packaging and other things you can do with agricultural pulp, right? So, and that's an ongoing investigation we've been doing for quite some time. And question about hemp, how long have I been involved? My first time really thinking about hemp in paper, obviously besides just reading about the history of paper and the history of hemp, was in 2015 when Fresh Press was invited to Farm Aid in Chicago by Willie Nelson's assistant. It did not include any visits or dinner with Willie Nelson, but we did get a chance to go up to Farm Aid and do some presentations on papermaking to a bunch of farmers and everyone there that was just kind of enjoying the music. And I met a person from Kentucky who worked in hemp. He was a hemp farmer, and he was asking me if I ever had used hemp in papermaking, and I told him I would like to, but at that time, I guess that's 7 years ago now, before the 2018 Farm Bill, I didn't have good access to it. He did offer to mail me a whole bunch of it, and I wasn't sure if he was joking or not, and that I would also then end up on an FBI watch list. So I didn't accept the opportunity to use the hemp. But in 2018 was really the first time I started to use hemp in papermaking, and I did end up ordering it from that same guy in Kentucky. Ever since, I've been approached by people here on campus about using hemp and wanting to provide me with hemp for paper making. And I've been making these papers and testing them like Steve has with different engineering labs to get data on strength, foldability, and all these different types of things that you need to know about paper. And it leads me to what I think is the biggest challenge for me, is just getting hemp regionally, locally. There are people that are growing it, and they don't have the capabilities yet to really separate the plant into different parts. They can give me the whole plant, and then I would have to build a device to separate things, and that's been a challenge. So I still have been ordering it from that same guy I met at Farm Aid 7 years ago. But recently, last year, and I haven't had the opportunity to come visit her, but in Illinois, there's the president of the Hemp Growers Association is a woman, one of the only female hemp farmers in the state. And she's been really interested in working with me. She's about 2 hours away, and I still need to find a way up to visit her to see maybe she can be the person that provides me with hemp. And the university's been growing it, and they've been telling me their biggest issue with growing it is pest management, and they haven't been able to figure that out. So it's nice to be here. Oh, what am I excited about? I'm excited about the same things that Alexandra is excited about. So
Good answer. All right, thanks, Eric. All right, let's move to Guy.
Hey, y'all.
Hi, Guy.
if you'll notice the elaborate and the luxurious decor of my Zoom, I'm in motion between different parts of doing my little part and trying to establish the process chain for hemp here in North Carolina. We just finished and first off, thank you, Shelby, for inviting me to participate in this. I appreciate it very much. You're a very persuasive and persistent organizer. And I'm glad to do it. You know, if we don't raise the water for everybody, none of us are going to float very much. And we just finished the Industrial Hemp Summit here in North Carolina. That was, this time, for the first time, it was basically concentrated on fiber. And it was really, really good. We had a lot of participation from elements of not only the production chain, but the economic chain that are really important to all this. And we had a chance to bring together almost 70 farmers and just talk about how to move forward with hemp fiber farming in a way that was agreeable to them because they could make money. And we also had a brand sponsor. Sorry, Allie, it wasn't the big P this time, but I'm, you know, you guys are always in the lead. We both know that. VF Corp sponsored a group of farmers to come together and talk about what do they need, what would it take to have them move forward comfortably towards hemp fiber ag, and particularly to move towards regenerative agriculture within all that. And so that was real educational for everyone. I would say that, let's see, the biggest challenge. Let's see, Allie, I've known you for, what was it, 6 years ago that we started? I mean, so everything Allie said, plus, I remember trying to get the first seed over here that was designed genetically for textile grade fiber. And I have some experience doing this in China, but translating it to America was a particular challenge. The first degumming that resulted in something that we could blend with cotton and spin into yarn. The first knit fabric, the first woven fabric. I mean, we've been able to get that done on a commercial level here. I have to say that it wasn't because of any particular smarts on my part. I was blessed to have the 20 years in China doing this, but also being here in North Carolina. Basically, it would have been sinful to not bring it forward from here. I mean, we've got all the elements, all the tools. Anybody here that's on this particular Zoom that's involved with textiles in any way knows that amongst many of the other American universities, North Carolina State University has a very, very, very good textile program. And so I've been utilizing their facilities, and I've also been using the facilities of the Textile Technology Center in Gaston County, which is up towards Charlotte. And I don't think any other state has those kind of opportunities for entrepreneurs to move forward with fibers and yarn and spinning, honestly. I mean, so I've taken advantage of what's here, and that's just not available in other places. But anyway, with the help of many, many, many others, and I would add that we often sing the song of the farmer for hemp, and that's right, rightfully so. It begins with the farming and the farmer and agriculture. That's the hemp story. But I have heard so many stories along the way from people who are involved with stock fiber processing, that truckers, people who repair carding machines, or who are the ones that work at the carding machines every day in a spinning mill, or who work on the spinning range and were charged with adjusting 112 bobbins to, or 112 spindles on the range to accept a blend that they've never tried before of two natural fibers. And in the weaving rooms, where I've seen people say, I've honestly seen someone say that rather than continue weaving on the second shift, go ahead and turn the machine off and she'll be back in the morning to run it. And she'd be the manager for the weaving room of 300 machines. And, but the person they were going to assign the second shift management of weaving to was her daughter, but she didn't trust her to be good enough and careful enough with this, the first hemp woven fabric in America. The knitting rooms, finishing, dyeing, it's been incredible. I mean, every single step of the way, I've met people who I would never have thought knew how to spell hemp. But all of a sudden I find out for one reason or another, they're passionate about this opportunity for American textiles and backwards, all the way down through American agriculture. And they see it as a new way of thinking about how they are all involved in what can be a transparent and authentic chain of production to the consumer. Everybody wants this to happen. So it's every single step's been a challenge, but every single step has brought me great personal gratification. I've had more fun the last 5 years than I had the previous 31 in my industry. So that being said, that's all I got to say, I guess.
We'll hear more from you later, I'm sure. But thank you very much, Guy. All right, and then our last panelist, we have Greg.
This Campus Iris 722.
We have someone unmuted here. We'll get that. I'll unmute. Greg, I'm going to add you in the spotlight here. All right.
All righty. Well, hey, everybody. Thanks for having me here. It's Greg Wilson from Hempwood. We're in Murray, Kentucky. We are the only manufacturer of hempwood in the world, and we're the only building material manufacturer using hemp, or at least fiber hemp, in the United States. So we got 30 people plus or minus, depending on who's starting and who's finishing. We got 2 factories. We run 6 days a week, and we make all these things. If you're watching, this is actually our hemp floor that's installed in our office. These are tables. Here's my beautiful wife. Say hi, babe. She's our office manager. You have tables that are made out of it. You've got desks, countertops. You've got cabinetry, all these different things that we got here. This is Alyssa. If anybody follows us on social media, it's her and Felicity that are taking care of that. But you can see it's not about me, it's about the product. And so this is our Riff sawn flooring. This is our live sawn flooring. This is a bourbon stain. That's a natural color. And this is actually, we just shot, it's after 4 o'clock, but that is where we make all the hempwood. So it's the one and only one of those in the world. You can see here some lumber we got ready to go down to our finished goods mill downtown. So we're making this stuff. We are carbon negative as a product and as a company. Everything we do around here is actually just a math equation. So the company's name is Fibonacci because we use the Fibonacci sequence as our compression ratio for making hempwood. And we actually, the Fibonacci sequence is pretty dang close to what the carbon sequestration rate is for hemp, pulling carbon from the air. So we actually call hempwood carbon squared. That's been kind of our tagline this year. It's pretty neat to see everybody on here. I just got to finally meet Guy in person after hearing about him for ages now. And what we need is we need the market to know what we're doing, because we are rocking and rolling with making hempwood. We're starting to make headway more into the carbon negative or carbon neutral commercial building sector, with companies like Microsoft trying to get us into their new campus out in Washington State. We've got JP Morgan, who's been speccing us for their new global headquarters. We've got BMW that's doing They're electric car dealerships. Got our first Target store with Hempwood displays in it recently. So it's starting to get out there for these kind of big name things, but they're more one-off purchases. We need to get this to be in front of everybody, because we still have 95% of America who doesn't know what Hempwood is or that it even exists. Last year, we had 99%. So it's getting better. It's working, and I'm spending my life on the road pretty much now. I don't get to make stuff anymore except for on Sundays. I get to try to sell stuff Monday to Friday. I say from now, or from the beginning of last year until now, we got our second mill open, I've had to kind of fill the capacity in there. So from 6 a.m. until 10 p.m., I'm trying to drive some revenue into the business. And then outside of those hours, then I get to actually work on creating or making something or going to a trade show or whatever that is. And Sunday, my wife and I go for a walk in the morning, and then I get to go in and actually make a table or make a cabinet or try to figure out how to make some of the new products out of hempwood that people haven't really gotten into yet. So if someone like Patagonia was looking for display racks, it would be a pretty good fit to have an American-made, carbon negative, no formaldehyde building material that outperforms your traditional hardwoods. And because the price of imports and the price of petroleum-based adhesives like formaldehyde are skyrocketing, we're directly competitive. So there's no reason not to use hempwood in a lot of these applications, because that cost difference has been taken away. The performance distance has been taken away. Performance distance in between the two, sorry. What it really needs is people just to know about it, because I've thrown everything I got in this world at it. I got 30 mouths to feed here. We got first facility, 16,500 square feet. It's been in operation. We're in our fourth year now. Actually, our fourth birthday is in 11 days from now. So we were started on Pi Day. So we're started on Pi, and this whole thing is just a math equation. It's kind of nature's algorithm that takes carbon, turns it into a biomass material, and then we try to compress that into flooring that's stored under your feet. And we did it with the bamboo. That's where my background is. My college project was figuring out how to make a log out of bamboo. And so I lived in China for, I guess it was about 14 years. And we built 53 mills doing this. That company still does 40% of the world's bamboo flooring. So it was a big business. We were able to scale that thing. But this one's doing it in America. So it's locally grown, locally made, locally sold with a soy-based adhesive. So you don't have VOC emissions. We actually have our test results that show that we have non-detectable levels of VOCs inside of our product, which means there's no off-gassing happening there. And then this stuff, we get to pay all our people right. So we have people that are interns and operators in the facility here that are actually buying houses in our local community. And around here, that, I mean, $15 an hour doesn't seem like a lot of money in a city, but when someone's arguing in New York City to be able to make $15 an hour working at Amazon, like, we just say, hey, welcome to the team here. That's kind of where we start. So doing well by doing right, I guess, is the best way to put it, with just trying to figure out where we fit in this world, kind of what we're doing. We actually use our waste to make our energy. And so our thermal energy, especially when it's above 50 degrees, our thermal energy is supplied by our waste. Once it goes below 50 degrees, we have to have some backup energy that comes from our natural gas. But my program or project is going to be by next winter to add in another 1 million BTU bioburner, so we can replace all of the natural gas in here, and our electricity comes from hydro. So, I mean, when people are talking about trying to do something like that, this is a big science experiment that now we're just trying to figure out how to make it commercially viable. And the answer is just letting people know about it.
Great.
Uh-oh, there's a bunch of questions.
Oh, no. Thanks very much, Greg. Okay, so that's great. And what I was hoping for, so what we have here is a group of people. I'll take you off the spotlight here for a second. And then, did that work? Let's see. Spotlight for everyone. I don't know what that means. So what I'm hoping now, so people are starting to write questions in the chat. So there's a very manageable number of questions in the chat. So I think that we can go through those, and then people could either continue to ask questions in the chat, or they can raise their hand or unmute themselves to ask a question. So I'll start from the very beginning. I'm trying to see if this, is it just highlighting Greg right now on everyone's screen? No, okay, good. It's just on my screen then, perhaps. So the first question that we have is for Allie. So this is specific, and I knew you were going to get this question, but where does Patagonia currently source their hemp from?
So currently, most of the hemp that we use in our product line is being sourced from China. And that's because China has turned hemp into an art. They've been doing this for a very long time. They're very good at doing it consistently. And the partner that we currently work with has been looking into technology for reducing water in parts of the process, as well as using sustainable energy in their facilities, and has also been working with the local farmers to start to convert some of the hemp to organic hemp. So we have a long-term partnership there that we're really proud of, but we are looking at domestic hemp and how we support farmers here in the US. So we've started engaging on some projects with US hemp, and we will have products coming out with some US hemp here shortly. So we're really excited to be expanding kind of our hemp portfolio.
So I guess I just a quick follow-up on that, which is how much hemp do you think annually Patagonia uses?
Yeah, that's a great question that we also get asked a lot. So when we think about hemp for textiles, especially, currently how it exists both at Patagonia and across other brands that are using hemp, we're more often than not blending hemp with another fiber. So we're not using a lot of 100% hemp textiles. For strength, perhaps it's being blended with a recycled polyester or something like that, or if it's more of a natural t-shirt style, maybe it's hemp plus cotton. So when we think about the amount of hemp that's used overall in the line, I think the last data point I pulled from our team was around, I don't know, pre-pandemic 2018, 2019, we were using under 2 tons of hemp just across our entire line. And that's for all business across Patagonia. So when we think about, how much is being grown here in the US and how exciting it is for textiles, it's also important to temper expectations around how much hemp is going to be viable and usable for textiles long term. So it is a smaller number than most people estimate.
Is that processed hemp? That's like fine or long
Correct.
hemp for textile? Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. I will go back to the chat, but since Steve raised his hand, I'll ask the panelists can speak first.
Now, I wanted to get this question in while we were talking about textiles, and I guess this question might be more for Guy, and I'm really curious if he's seen any experimentation with plant and protein blends, looking at hemp and wool, for instance, or other type of protein type of textiles.
Sure. Yes, seen a lot of it. All in China. We've blended hemp fiber with everything from alpaca to yak hair in China. And I have swatch books of textiles that are 18 inches high, knit and woven with different blends of literally every animal I can think of, pretty much, at least that's within the commercial world of fiber and textiles. And most of the man-made synthetics, soy, chitin, certainly all the viscose stuff, the different bamboo viscose or rayon, as they may say, you can blend it with anything. I haven't seen anything you can't blend it with yet. That if you can blend cotton with it, you can blend hemp with it. It's a little different technique, particularly with wool. If it's lesser grades of wool, but if it's a better grade of wool, it doesn't do that well with super wool sometimes because all the scales are removed and you don't get cohesion in the yarn itself. But you can work around that. So there's no reason not to blend it with wool. If that helps.
No, thank you. I might bother you in the future.
Sure. I work with a mini mill here in North Carolina that does a lot of straight out wool. And they've been playing around with hemp fiber for a good while. They might be a good contact for you too.
Yeah, we have a couple of mini mills, but they're all protein fibers, and it's hard, with the exception of flax, for obvious reasons. But I think that there's a huge opportunity that they see, that there's just a lot of unknowns in this area. So
I love me some mini mills. They're like the Elon Musk of textiles.
Great. So another question that we have, Greg, is actually came up when you were speaking at if there was any potential for using a hemp-based adhesive instead of a soy-based adhesive, or what went into that decision.
Oh yeah, it works. It is not commercially viable right now. So what it is all based off of is you have to use the proteins as a bridge in between your hemp fiber and your cross-linking agent. And soy has a protein content of 43% roughly, where hemp has a protein content closer to 40%. And so there's a greater protein content in soy than there is in hemp. And it only comes from the hemp hearts, which are a very expensive thing to be able to crush and turn into a protein mix, whether it's a liquid or it's a powder. And so it actually takes my glue and triples the price of it. And we don't have the capability of taking those hearts, drying those hearts, crushing those hearts, and turning it into a flour in order to be able to do it. So that's where the issue comes from, is we can use a bio-based adhesive with soy, which we developed with, the US Soybean Board has helped us with some different grants. Oregon State University, who's actually visiting here, we're talking about setting up a structural lumber mill out west with them, if the government would ever kind of let us do it and give us some grants. Then Murray State University, who works with us. So we were having our powwow today of Oregon State and Murray State and how to do that. Then we wanted to not have too many variables in the product, because if you have a flop on your product quality on a launch, then it's dead in the water. So when the textile people are talking about having a blend of hemp and other fabrics or other cottons, things like that, we actually do a engineered profile on our floor, which means it has a plywood backer to it. It's a West Virginia poplar, 100% made in America, Hempwood is. It has no added formaldehyde. It's actually the people that were the first ones to commercialize a soy-based adhesive. And Columbia helped us out with a whole lot of the research, them and Cargill, with trying to figure it out. But hempwood is too hard to nail because the density is so high. So you couldn't nail down a floor onto a wood subfloor. And you can't install a solid wood onto a concrete subfloor thanks to climate change. So when I was studying wood flooring in college, we used to say it was the Florida-Georgia line where your solid woods would go to. And now it's the North Carolina-South Carolina line because of the dramatic changes in weather, which means humidity, rainstorms, hydrostatic pressure through concrete. Natural materials fail unless they're engineered to fit our new climate requirements. And so that's why vinyl flooring in our industry is so popular right now, because it's waterproof. It's just a piece of petroleum. And because storms have become such a big thing and fluctuations in humidity have become such a big thing, it's like a vicious cycle that climate change causes you to use less climate friendly, less natural products. And now vinyl is 15% of your flooring market. Somebody figured out how to make it look pretty like a piece of wood, but it doesn't have the upkeep and the natural restrictions of a natural material. Now they use vinyl. Only problem is it causes cancer. So you're bringing an exterior grade product which has VOC emissions. Vinyl was created in a building material for siding. In 2002, I was an apprentice engineer at a vinyl siding line, and you actually had to have ventilation inside of the mill while you're making vinyl siding because it's an exterior product. Now, 20 years later, it's the most popular interior flooring product. Sounds a little bit crazy to me.
It's interesting. I'm just thinking about my house right now. How much vinyl do I have? Gonna get some hempwood. Steve, I'm gonna hold off real quick on your question just to ask one more from the chat, which is for kind of everyone. And I had the same question as well. So for each individual industry, so whether that's for paper, building materials, textiles, do you have a certain set of specs on the material that comes to you, and how and where do you get that tested? So, you know, what makes something, what is the best product you can receive and how are you quantifying that? So maybe we can just go round robin, maybe start with Eric, you haven't spoken in a while, and then I'll call out some other people.
Okay, sure, yeah. Spec wise, we've been ordering specifically hemp herds, and when they do come, we can't really tell them what size, they just come, and they usually look like animal bedding, things that you would find on a farm. And that size does work in terms of the papermaking process. We have also found that the smaller you get the fibers before you put them through a beating process, will decrease the amount of time it takes to beat them, and also, of course, energy use. And so we're very interested in making sure we don't use as much energy in the process, because currently I cannot get confirmed information about how much of our energy mix at the university is renewable. All I can know is maybe it's 10%, but I don't know. So we can also change the size of that particular hemp herd when it comes at the, there's a couple different places on campus we can do that with a very large scale like chipper. But what they do send us works.
I'm muted. Follow up with you, Steve, with that, because I'm curious if for paper production, you're also only receiving herds, or if you're also looking at blending different fiber lengths.
So we're not necessarily starting with a standard as much as we're really looking at trying to understand the materials to maybe inform standards. And there are certainly standards that exist. You know, our regional industrial paper facilities are importing essentially chemically pulped dry linters that they add in or cut into their materials in order to qualify it as hemp product. But we don't really know, like when I buy hemp linters, it's coming from Spain and there's no real tracking of where it's been pulped or what that pulping process has been. As far as like where I'm sourcing fibers, I'm cutting them right at the roots at the farm and hand baling them, and you know, I hand process. So I bring them back while they're green. I steam them. I'm hand stripping the best from the herd to create the two fiber streams, and I make paper out of both. the bast and the hurd, and they have very different, unique qualities. Obviously, if you look at them, you know that the bast fiber is really long chain cellulose. The hurd fiber is much shorter chain, much more dense. And so we're recording, you know, all of those variables as we're bringing those products in. We're recording our cook times for those different fibers. We're recording our beat times for those different fibers. And so we're doing a traditional Western style mechanical processing, with the exception of the cooking stage with sodium carbonate, which is releasing the pectins, lignins, and non-fibrous material. And so we also, you know, do temperature tests for those cooking times to kind of get an idea of what those different variables are along the way. And so, you know, if you went to someone like Georgia Tech, they've got this stuff already nailed down, or North Carolina, you know, where they've been invested in biomaterial paper processing. But you know, the fact that these materials haven't necessarily been readily available, they're not a commodity scale by any means. Adoption in the industrial manufacturing just hasn't happened, and I don't believe those institutions are really willing to adapt their practices yet when there's not a commodity waiting at their gate. So yeah, as far as standards, you know, we're looking at the different cultivars, and again, it's going back to that production side where I'm partnering with a grower farmer, and they're looking at all different types of plants. And so we're also making paper from CBD plant waste, as well as fiber strains, as well as grain strains, and just trying to get an idea of the different characteristics. And yeah, essentially just creating a bunch of data that we look at and keep making paper with is. And, you know, I think that's the interesting thing too with kind of these side ventures, is really just trying to drive that conversation, right? And I think that Greg points right to it, is that a lot of people aren't necessarily adopting this, and part of it is really awareness. And I think that even Guy spoke to it. You know, there's all these tradespeople, true craftspeople, who have the abilities to do this. But again, it's this idea of adopting it into an industrial practice, which kind of leads to my question for Greg, but I'll hold off as we finish this round of questions.
How about for you, Guy? What is the source that you're feeding in at Bare Fiber that you're looking for? What are the specs you're interested in?
Sure. Well, honestly, you know, I'm not really smart about any of this. I've been modeling off of things that other people have taught me all my life. And from the Chinese, I learned that the better fiber to spin with was from stalks that came from plots of land that were seeded densely with a lot of growth, and that the optimum diameter of the stalk was something like a number 2 pencil or a chopstick, about 6 to 8 feet high, maybe. And from that, what I've learned is that is the best for me for textile grade fiber, because that allows you to decorticate much more easily because there's less hurd to deal with. And I spent 4.5 years telling everybody I couldn't remember how to spell hurd because nothing matters but textile grade fiber. However, I have had a tattoo recently on the inside of my arm, so I can remember because people keep talking about it so much. You know, that fiber, once it's mechanically separated from the hurd, it's important to remember not to be too aggressive in that. You find a lot of the hammer mill people are pounding it through, and that creates not only breaks in the fiber, but indentations within the fiber, which weaken it later, particularly after degumming. Degumming, there's 3 dozen and another dozen ways to do it on the internet. You can do it at home with your washing machine, but you can only do it about 3 times, and you need to get a new washing machine. Goodwill has them pretty cheap. I've done about 14 or 15 machines from there. you know, degumming is basically just cleaning it, and hot water, hot water is the most important thing. That's what's going to release the lignin. And some sort of alkalinity doesn't have to be a whole lot stronger than the shampoo you use on horses. And that's going to release the lignin and the pectin, but you can't take it all the way down, and you get the pure cellulosic fiber, which is too weak. So you want to be able to keep bundles that are about half the micronair of cotton, or about double the micronair of cotton, and about an inch, inch and a half long, and then open them up mechanically again. And you have something that will fit within a short staple spinning range, which can deal with that kind of fiber length, of which 99% of all the spinning equipment for yarn in the world is designed for short staple spinning. So we can talk about designing spinning equipment specifically for hemp, or we can talk about long fiber hemp and wet spinning and variations of that. But I think one of the purposes of this particular Zoom was to talk about commercial opportunities and applications. And if it won't fit on a short staple spinning range, it's not commercial, not in the real world. So being in that shape, being in that type of fiber, you can blend it pretty easily with cotton. It has to be very clean of hurt. You can't spin hurt. Okay, period, point blank. If there's hurt in what you got, then you've got trash. And you won't get anybody who's got a commercial spinning range to even allow you to get close to it if you've got any hurt, because you can ruin one pretty quickly, and they're pretty expensive. So I think the question was, what was I looking for in fiber? I think, so that's what I'm looking for in fiber. I'm looking for clean of herd. I'm looking for what some people might refer to as baby hemp. I'm looking at I like retting. I think retting's great because it allows the decortication process to not have to be so aggressive, and thereby protecting the fibers themselves from breaking on the type of roller mill, hammer mills that exist in the US, and indenting it and weakening it later. We get better, truer fiber that way. And I've run a lot of trials in the past 4.5 years, and not just with fiber, but I've run spinning trials on open end, ring spun compact, vortex, Cyro compact, and a couple of weird ones that even I don't know how to spell, and done the trials all the way through and kept the measurements from the sliver of what we were making to the roving to the yarn. And right now we're 3/4 of the way through a Department of Defense Marine Corps Combat Utility Uniform fabric development that was an RFP that 4 companies won. We were glad to be one of them. It's the phase 1 of it, to develop a lighter, tougher material for the Marine Corps BDU, battle dress uniform for the warfighters. And we've made 4 different blends with as many as 4 different fiber components within that. And the way we've been processing and bringing forward our hemp fiber has been favorable to not only blends with cotton, but multi-fiber blends and other applications for more sophisticated yarns. So I'm pretty sure that we're doing it one of the right ways. I'm sure there's more than one right way.
Thanks. I'm gonna skip over to Greg because you have a different industry. I'm curious what comes into your facility and what you're looking for.
Okay, so we use whole stalks in baled format by the truckload. We need at least a truck a week. So we're built out to do a ton a day. We don't do a ton a day. We're at like 25% capacity of what we're supposed to do. And whenever you hear people that talk about these enormous numbers and scale of hemp, I don't know anybody that's actually doing them. We have, a truck comes in with round bales is usually about 12 tons. It's the whole stalk. I prefer it to be a dual crop where someone's already cut off the top. And then we buy the bottom 4 to 6.5 feet of the stalk. We have a standard grain contract or standard contract that we put out where we pay $200 per ton delivered to our factory gate of our hemp stalk. And it has to be less than 15% moisture content. It has to have no mold, and it has to have less than 15% foreign material. So it's pretty simple and easy. With the price of commodities this year, we're probably going to have to rearrange those terms. If it's a dual crop, it's 150 historically. If it's a dedicated crop, it's $200 historically. This year, we're probably going to have to provide seed and do $200. Removing some of the risk of doing it, reducing some of the, well, boosting some of the profit of doing it, because beans and corn are at almost all-time highs. I mean, they're limit up almost every day. And so in our area, 200 bushels of corn is about the standard. At $7.50 a bushel today, somebody's going to get $1,500 for planting corn. I live on an organic farm. I wasn't a farmer growing up, but we have a permaculture organic farm. I lease it from actually one of our hemp growers' brothers. So we've got all the different cool things that come along with that, with the fruits and vegetables and berries and mushrooms and all that stuff. And we raise our cows and we feed them hemp seeds, and we feed our chickens hemp seeds and all that stuff. But hemp is a row crop. Hemp doesn't work, from my experience, being grown organically. And so in order to get a volume, the reality is you need to have some sort of herbicides and pesticides, because hemp doesn't work if it has weeds in it, if it doesn't get up, if it has just all the things that you have from a row crop. Planting a row crop is the way it needs to go. I mean, we plant 1 million plants an acre. If you're planting CBD, you can do that organically, because it's like growing organic tobacco, where you're planting one plant every 42 inches apart. We plant them every 7 inches. And so there's that many more plants out there. And the biggest hindrances we have are all the regulations on how you can get hemp into the ground, and therefore how you can actually have a viable crop, rather than this little specialty thing that I have to convince people to grow for us. If the federal government made animal feed legal, then all of a sudden byproduct, which would be our stalk, the same as wheat straw, would be readily available. You're allowed to feed it to humans, but you can't feed it to chickens. Seems a little bit crazy to me.
For sure. Does it matter to you? So Guy had mentioned, the number 2 pencil thing for the diameter. Do you have an interest in the bast to herd ratio? Does that matter?
In general, what we see comes in is about 80% herd, 20% fiber. The secret to Hempwood is we use the whole stalk. And so the herd absorbs our adhesive, which is it's stealing the proteins from that soy flour and the binding agent and hooking it all together. And the fiber reinforces it like fiber reinforced concrete. So 80-20 mix is about the norm that I see coming in. And for me, as long as it's not the CBD stalks that have those big kind of golf ball size stalks to them that I can't crush open, so I can't penetrate any glue into there, it works. I mean, we've had many types of hemp come in. Sometimes we run different types of hemp every other week that are coming in from different growers. What we find is the same latitude tends to be the best outcome, because America hasn't had its own genetics program. And that is an absolute science, and the basis for all hemp materials is going to be the genetics. You have to just look at Kentucky's pretty similar to Italy. And so Italian genetics have performed best here.
Mhm.
Southern France works pretty well too. Some of the Chinese stuff works pretty well. The Canadian, Polish, and Ukrainian stuff does not work very well here because it's too hot. Yeah. The same, I bought my buddy Witold over in the, what is he? He's in the Polish Natural Fibers Research Institute. That's been at it for like 70 or 80 years. I bought a truckload of seeds from him a couple years ago. It didn't turn out very well. They were gracious enough to send us some more the next year. We sent it up to some of our production stuff we were doing in Pennsylvania and Oregon, and it turned out fantastic. And so literally just finding something that has a similar latitude and you know what's in the seed makes all the difference in the world. The problem is most hemp seed genetics companies go out of business every year. So who we bought seeds from last year, we probably won't get seeds from this year because you call them and the phone numbers change.
Sure. Yes. So the panel goes until 6, but I don't want to overly exhaust people from listening and answering, but I want to, maybe we'll ask 2 more questions and then I'm going to just close out with the upcoming workshops. So this last question, I'll start with you, Allie, is it's based kind of on, I want to focus now on consumer demand and consumer interest and marketing in that, because that's what's really, that's the other side of this, right? Is, okay, maybe we can grow it and we can make some products, but if they're not wanted or there's no demand for it, then there's no purpose behind this. So what have you found, through your experiences with Patagonia, with marketing, what do you think is kind of driving consumer decisions right now in, this is for all of you, but for you, Allie, particularly in textiles, and kind of what might be some important steps moving forward to get hemp still more out there than it is right now?
Definitely. So I think there are a couple ways you can approach hemp marketing. And I think right now, especially coming out of 2 years of the pandemic and the challenges that have been going on with the supply chain for just the fashion industry as a whole. And I think we're looking at consumers right now that are the most educated that they have ever been when it comes to how their clothes are made and where things are coming from and social issues, as well as the environmental responsibility of fashion companies. So from that perspective, hemp is in a really great place to be a quote unquote sustainable fiber in the portfolio of options available to consumers. That being said, because hemp had such a close association with marijuana for so long, there's kind of the initial roadblock of separating hemp as its own fiber. And then you have the next kind of roadblock for consumer education, which is what makes someone want to buy hemp versus anything else that's out there. So it's focusing on, the phytoremediation properties, the regenerative ag, the opportunities in soil and, soil carbon sequestration. And then the other side of that is the strength of the plant. So that's kind of what we've built our Patagonia workwear line around, is the fact that hemp is such a strong fiber. It reinforces other fibers that it can be blended with. And because of that, you get longevity of product. You're going to have to buy less and buy less as, less often. So the idea is that, the strength of the fiber is a really big selling characteristic, is why you would choose hemp over, just a regular cotton option or just a regular polyester option. I would say there's a certain amount of, difference between technical hemp marketing for something like workwear, where we are focusing in on kind of that strength around the fiber and focusing on the social and the farming and the agriculture, versus where we see hemp in the rest of our main line for like our sportswear product, where we're focusing on comfort that hemp offers, looking at really fine hemp yarns that are going to give great shirting for hot weather. What are some of those additional comfort properties that hemp offers? So, a couple different ways to look at it, but I would say we are seeing a demand for this now. There are people who are interested in it. When we launched the Patagonia workwear line, we were really happy with the response. And I think people were really surprised to get a product that felt like it was already quite broken in and comfortable, but they were seeing the same performance and strength characteristics they would in a regular, duck canvas. So I think it's really important to understand what your product is and how it differentiates from other products on the market.
Thanks very much. I'm gonna move here. Let's go back to Eric and Steve, both, I guess, from the paper side of things. Paper is an interesting product, right? Because I don't know what the demand is right now comparatively. Packaging is a whole another thing, right? So it seems like, when I think about my paper use and my packaging use, I know one is, they're kind of inverse almost. So can you talk a little bit about hemp as a paper or packaging material and what might drive demand for those products? Maybe one of you can talk about one area, or each of you can pick an area to talk about.
Steve, do you want to talk about that NSF group we did with a number of years ago where we were asking that same question? And
So I'm trying to remember. So that's been a bit for me.
yeah.
I guess. So a couple of things. One is paper. We use more paper than we ever have as a society, right? And it's so ubiquitous, and it's almost invisible in the ways that we use it. So I would argue that paper isn't going away anytime soon. And paperboard, cardboard, things of that nature, obvious areas to make interventions. I have the luxury of being in the Department of Community Development and Applied Economics. And so, my department chair is one of the co-PI on the REEU grant. And one of the projects that we have students doing is developing consumer surveys. And so we've done a regional survey. We've branched out to a couple of the home regions of the first cohort students to extend those surveys into those regional areas. And then I know that Jane Kolodinsky and Tyler Mark from University of Kentucky have done a national survey, I believe, around consumption. But in my conversations with Jane, she always frames it as there's public consumption and personal consumption. And so there's two ways of looking at the consumer and the ways that consumers behave. And that is the outward one. Patagonia, for instance, probably one of the highest states per capita for Patagonia ownership is the state of Vermont. I don't know if I'm making that up, Allie, but I know I've got quite a few in my house and they get used heavily and repaired regularly, and not because they're faulty, it's because they're used heavily. But I think that when you look at other types of products that hemp can be rolled into, and so, talking about hemp hearts and consuming those. So there's all these different streams that hemp can find itself into in the way that it's consumed, which makes it really complex. And I think that also contributes a bit to hemp trying to find its way into a standard commodity, right? Because there are all these different directions that it can go. So while I can't really speak from the economics perspective, and going back to the material side, or at least the paper side, I see hemp as a real viable option, and I'd love to see our industry pivot toward it. There was a real heavy push in Canada to go toward wheat straw. And Eric, I know you can certainly talk more about that. But I would like to see a national strategy of where we actually start to look at hemp as that consumable type of ephemeral material. And again, going back to paper, it's probably not the first use, right? But by partnering with waste streams of textile industry, for instance, and waste streams of wood fabrication industries, you could certainly supply enough fibers to go into the paper manufacturing without it having to be virgin hemp fibers. So
yeah, that was one of the big things that Steve and I learned that what he just said about waste streams and working in this NSF, had some other name attached to it, program. Kind of
Oh, the ICOR program. Now I remember.
There you go. Yeah. And we learned a lot from that, in that, the waste stream interest from the industry was into packaging. A lot of like you buy a new television set and they have styrofoam to protect it in the box. Well, the pulp, I always forget the name of it, but there's a process where you can thermoform pulp into different forms, and these could take the place, because hemp is strong. And it's a perfect use for hemp waste stream, is into these kind of quote unquote throwaways, which indeed then could be composted instead. Well, one problem we found with the paper industry, talking with them, is that they really fine tune their equipment for trees. Unless you really build it from the beginning for a different fiber, like they're doing in the state of Washington for wheat straw, they're reluctant to have to go back and say, we're going to have to reshift everything, because you're switching out what we're putting into the big machinery here to pulp the material. So we did learn that there's probably more industry acceptance with hemp or any agricultural fiber with this kind of packaging concept.
Thanks. I'll shift over here to Guy. What are your thoughts on the consumer demand of, so I mean, with what you're doing, is the goal to be supplying other companies with a raw source material that they could make then into products, or are you hoping to produce the products yourself to then sell? Are you going to compete against Patagonia?
Well, I would like to tell Ellie that my cat can beat your cat's ass. Maybe not. This cat's actually a puny cat. Let's see. I've worked for Patagonia in the past, and I wear Patagonia. That being said, I think they're one of the best brands in the world for quality of product. I think they're super expensive because they're unrelenting in the quality of the producers they source from. That's all good. So what do I want to do? I don't want to farm anymore. I really don't want to decorticate anymore. I want to upgrade everybody else's processed raw fiber into spinnable fiber, because it seems like that's what I'm best at. I'd like to bring together, I'm in the process of reorganizing what we do so that I'm able to make that happen for other people who are growing hemp. And I hope to be their most lucrative channel for the fiber. That being said, Greg, you remember all those folks from Montana that were at the conference, IND Hemp and all that?
Mm-hmm.
They're growing a lot, and they know what they're doing. They have the processing systems, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm looking to partner with them on some pretty significant acreage for the fiber, but then they're going to do what they do with her, et cetera, et cetera. I've got customers now for the fiber and for the blended and spun yarn in different counts. And moving forward with that, we've gone through the fabric trials and product trials. So what I lack is consistent raw material fiber to run through for upgrading. You can look out over a 5,000 acre cotton field, and everything is within the same 1 inch height, basically. And they almost literally have the same number of leaves, and they have between 21 and 23 bolls of cotton on them. And within those bolls, those fibers are within 1/8 of an inch, possibly, of length. And you know, that's a natural fiber crop. You know, that's what we're competing against. And we have nothing like that kind of consistency available from the agricultural side forward. And that makes it challenging to create a better yarn, particularly a finer count yarn for higher end products, say like a Brooks Brothers shirt and a pinpoint woven. I can do 30 singles pretty easy. And that's good because we're able to do higher end fleece. But I really like to do 40 singles. And I think that being said, I was doing a calculation this afternoon of how much fiber could I use if I could have as much as I wanted next year or this year for this crop. And basically I'm limited by spinning capacity in the United States because I'd rather not spin outside of the United States if I'm going to go to all this trouble with American fiber. And I cut back on an estimate because I could not get 1 million pounds of yarn spun here in the United States. Even if I had the best hemp fiber and was blending it with the best cotton, there's no way I could physically nobody would do it for me. There's not enough. So you're talking, I mean, Greg uses the whole plant, literally smashes it down, makes it look pretty and glues it hard, right? I mean, we're taking the higher end part of it and trying to segregate it completely from every other part of the plant. I mean, you have to do that in the beginning. And then there's lots of upgrading. So there's challenges. We're all getting there. You know, we're all, there's all kinds of people hitting it from different ways. I'm very confident of our future in textiles and apparel and made in the USA. I'm less confident of our manufacturing capacities, particularly within yarn and textiles here. If I had an unlimited amount of money, I'd love to say that I'd open a boutique spinning mill. But even if I did, I couldn't get any equipment for 2.5 years because they're all sold out. So what are we going to do? You can pay more to some of the existing mills and do this and do that, but just because you've done that doesn't mean that they're going to do a higher quality job. It's the times they are what they are, right? And as far as pulp and paper, I spent yesterday morning at NC State non-wovens. Well, first I spent the morning at forestry and paper products, and then I spent the afternoon in non-wovens. And we made some paper for the people that were visiting that I was touring through all there. And there's been a lot of discussion of pulp and paper with one of the companies buying Lumberton Cellulose here in North Carolina. And that facility has always been used for cotton, for linter pulping, cotton linters and seed. And there's certainly going to be a market for all of this. But right now, I think we're all going to be somewhat bottlenecked by manufacturing capabilities, no matter what processing stream we're going towards.
Yeah, it certainly has been a wild ride in the 3 years I've been involved. I can't imagine for those of you that started early on, and I am very interested to see in the next decade what's going to happen. I think it is one of those crops where we're talking about the different things that can be used. It seems like, whether it diversifies in the field, feeding into these different areas, or in a better case scenario, perhaps where it is, you can grow one plant separated from multiple streams where you could potentially get your long line bass fiber and have herd that could be processed into a different product, whether that's for all of these different waste streams, maximizing the use of the plant, and on top of the fact that you can cut the grain head off of it and make food or animal feed products. Definitely seems like
Table.
what?
And tabletops.
Yes.
Corey,
Tops.
but the rest of it.
Yes. Yeah, the goal at the end of these workshops is to buy some hempwood and to make a cabinet that we can display some of the products that we made from the workshop. So I'll be in touch with Greg. I guess just letting Greg have one more thing to close out, and then there are a few more questions that while I put the presentation back up, if people want, if the panelists can look there, if there's anything that they think that they can answer, to type an answer into that, that would be wonderful. Greg, there was a question for you about trade shows. You mentioned that you're going around. So what has that been like? Does it seem like there's a lot of interest? Oh, what, Rob?
It was answered. He personally sent it to me.
Oh, well, you can answer to the group, Greg, I guess. Have you felt that?
So we are the prettiest girl at the dance at every trade show we go to. We get the most attention out of just about anything, mainstream or even hemp trade shows. So I've been to 3 trade shows already this year. I've got another one this month. I'll have another 5 or 6. I can say that there's typically a line to talk to us. I try to gather everybody into a group so we don't have to repeat the exact same story again, because the first mover disadvantage of what we're doing is that you have to teach everybody about the product so they feel comfortable to use it or do it. And so that's actually been my kind of job. I'm an engineer by training, but right now I'm a storyteller. And so I'm like the Burt's Beeswax guy that has to go around and just tell everybody about, hey, this is what's happening. And I got to wear my flannel shirt and wear my boots and get in there and just say, hey, this is what Hempwood is. But people love it. People get overexcited about it. People have just, I think the problem with the conversion to sales are building materials are not an impulse buy. Building materials are, I'm planning to redo my floors in my house or my tabletop or desk in 6 months or 2 years from now. And the reality is hempwood is not just a product. Hempwood is more of a lifestyle choice. If you want to have something that's made in America, if you want to have something that's a healthy building material, if you want to have a product that is carbon negative, because I don't want to toot my own horn or anything like that, but we're kind of the bellwether for what's going on in American hemp production because we put it all out there. Like I was successful with my previous flooring runs. And now all of that is here under 2 roofs in Kentucky. And I said, you know what? I'm going to make it happen because you can't beat somebody who doesn't give up. And so the reality is if I was a publicly traded company, I would have been bankrupt years ago. But I just have my own personal credit card that can take care of a bill, or I can sell my stock in something else, like one of my other companies. I'll literally have like inventory in I have a Tasmanian company that recycles wood, and I'll sell my inventory and use that to pay my bills here. Or I sold my house to pay payroll, sell my boat to pay payroll, those type of things. Like that's how a company works. It's not by, hey, let's go to Wall Street and we're going to raise $100 million and we're going to try to develop this idea. Like that's a movie. That's not reality. Reality is I asked if we could do this show after 4 o'clock because that falls outside of when my employees are going to be here working. And then I've got people that I got to take to dinner tonight before my 10 o'clock call tonight. And less, my New Year's resolution is I don't pull down that set of stairs right there and go sleep on my air mattress above the office anymore to try to get some of my sanity. I think next year I might even start flying to trade shows instead of driving overnight and just pulling over to take a nap on my way to Florida. Because I think somebody told me when I was telling them I was doing that, they said that's how Michael Jordan's dad got taken out. He was napping on the side of the road in between driving, didn't get a hotel room. So like there's those things you have to do to get it going, but they're not sustainable. Like I'm trying to only work 50 hours of the hours in a week this year. And that's 84 hours. I'm a numbers guy. And so if I can hit just 84 hours this week instead of 100 hours, this year, 84 hours a week rather than 100 like I was doing last year, and not sleep here, I might be able to get back into the kind of normal blood pressure range.
Got it. So
That
there
is a
you
real
have it,
thing too.
folks. To make it in this hemp industry, you only need to work between 84 and 100 hours a week.
It gets less and less and easier as things go.
Mhm.
And so it is moving in the right direction, like I said. That is true. That is happening. And it has like a movement behind it. That's all it is it's literally a lifestyle choice that is supporting a movement towards sustainable materials, sustainable agriculture, and a sustainable way of living.
It's amazing how many motels will accept pets without an additional charge.
The movement. Great. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead in the last couple minutes here and reshare my screen just to advertise these upcoming workshops. I know this is being recorded, so a lot of people are going to watch this that were unable to view it while it was live. So I really, really appreciate all of you hanging in there. So let's see, sharing the screen. All right, so just to reiterate, our lovely panelists for this session, I'm very appreciative if everyone can give either a silent round of applause or put up a little emoji in their chat window. But I really, really appreciate it. I feel very fortunate to have had all of your time, as it is very valuable. Then moving forward, so as I mentioned, there was supposed to be this kickoff panel to kind of just talk about hemp and the state of where hemp is, and some of the stories of people who've started creating products or work where they're actually making hemp products. This is going to be followed up this spring and here in Wisconsin around the Madison area with 3 paired virtual webinars and workshops. So the first of these will be coming up on April 6th. Erica Halverson, who is the CEO of Tiny E Paper Company, who is making hemp paper specialty products, will be talking about her journey into making these products and what she's gone through to actually, have in-hand products that she can sell and market. And that will be paired then with an actual hands-on workshop here at UW-Madison with Professor Mary Hark. This factors in now with the collaboration between the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, where I'm located, and the School of Human Ecology, where a lot of our workshop organizers are located. So Professor Mary Hark will be doing a demonstration using hemp that I grew in making hemp paper, where people can practice pulling hemp paper sheets. That's on April 7th. Then the second webinar will focus, a virtual webinar we'll be hearing from Tyler Jenkins from 1 Acre Exchange down in North Carolina. And he'll be talking about that program and really how to build an agricultural economy locally, and his experiences with hemp and what he's done with that program, which will be paired then with a in-person event led by Dr. Marianne Fairbanks here in the Department of Design Studies. We have a bunch of hemp processing tools that were built. You can see here a hemp brake that we've used to process a lot of hemp with that hemp brake, and those materials we've processed, and Marianne will be showing the step from going from the raw hemp material to breaking, scutching, hackling, and she's been spinning some of that. And you can see some of the products that we've developed, some just little hand towels and little purses developed from some of that raw material. So that's what that workshop will focus on April 15th. And then the last paired webinar will be Mark Taylor from University Urbana-Champaign will be speaking about hemp building materials or structural materials. So he is focused in architectural and interior design and construction, and talking about some of his products using different agricultural products with a focus on hemp for architectural building, followed up by an in-person event led by MFA candidate Veronica Pham here at the UW-Madison Ag Research Station. We'll be working with Hempcrete to build some various objects so people can see that process going from that raw hemp hurd, again, from the hemp stalks that we processed from my program and making hempcrete. So if there will be an email sent out to participants that have registered for this event, and it's available on my website as well, but you can either scan this barcode to get more information to sign up for these, or on the website there, alternativecrops.horticulture.wis.edu, Wisconsin Hemp by Hand. The workshops I think will be really fun. I know I'm excited to participate in those. And there's also my name and contact information if you have any follow-up questions or hear this later on. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And yes, I'd like to once again thank everyone wholeheartedly for participating in this. And I'll stick around for a minute or two, but otherwise, please enjoy your evenings, whatever that might be. It could be anywhere from, let's see, it's 5:40 in the Midwest, so 6:40 to 3:40, I guess, for our panelists. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Shelby.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate you.